everyone, it's Jennifer from Fiber Flux. Welcome back to our annual temperature crochet along. This is such a fun project. Lots of you participate, and it's such a fun and satisfying way to make something throughout the year and then to see at the end just how everything displays out. So in the past, this is our third temperature project that we've done. So in the past, we've done a shawl. Last year, we did this lovely blanket where we did a motif every day, and then we later, at the end of the year, added this gorgeous border onto it. So this year, we're going to kind of like scale things back. The blanket was a very large, involved project, which was super fun, but I like to change things up. We're going to make a scarf this year. We're going to do very simple stitches and an array of rainbow colors like we've been doing. That's kind of been the theme of all of our projects, although many of you shared gorgeous pastel palettes, neon palettes, muted heather palettes, so it's really been fun to see all of your work. Now, I do say scarf, but I made it on purpose so that there's no special stitch count. So you could do a blanket again if you like. I know a lot of you love to make blankets. You could do a shawl and make it just wider. There's going to be no special stitch count. We're just going to be doing some really simple half double crochet stitches. So if you're not familiar with the concept of a temperature project, what it is every day there is a high and a low, and there's an average temperature wherever you may live, and we have broken the numbers down into 10-degree increments. Now I'm doing Fahrenheit because of where I live, but you can of course do Celsius. I did 0 to 100, less than 0 degrees to 100 plus Fahrenheit. But you can break them down further. If it doesn't get to be 100 degrees where you live, or if it doesn't really get cold where you live, you can really customize it to where you live. And furthermore, it doesn't have to be 2020. It can be the year. Now, a lot of you have done this, and I think it's so special. A lot of you can do someone's birth month and give it as a gift. You can do your birth, not month, but birth year. You could do your birth year. You could commemorate a special occasion like an anniversary or something like that. So get creative, have fun with it, and we're going to go through the supplies first, and then we're going to make our little card together. Now, last year we made a card, and I put yarn samples on each one. Now, some of you prefer to do this digitally and just have it on your computer. Some of you like to make your swatches a little bit different. It's totally up to you. It's your project. But I like to just take a card, punch some holes in it, and add some yarn samples. So we're going to make ours together, and we're going to talk about the supplies, and then we're going to get right into the scarf. It's so super easy. And the other thing I wanted to share, I know a lot of you had mentioned when you do motif projects like this, the ends are just nuts. Like there's so many ends everywhere, but we are going to weave in the ends as we go. So you're not going to have very many ends left at the end of the year. That was a lot of, I said the word end a lot there. So let's jump into the supplies. What you're going to need for this project is obviously your yarn. We're going to talk about the colors and everything in just a moment. You're going to be using an H crochet hook, a 5mm H crochet hook. Now this is my Furls Odyssey hook, and I know a lot of you ask about my hook. I just always mention that. This is the peach and rose gold, in case you're wondering. You'll need a ruler or tape measure. That'll be super helpful to get the width that you like. Now you're going to do 365 rows, so that'll kind of, you know, the number of rows will sort of dictate the length of the scarf at this point. But to get the width in the beginning, this is super helpful to have. You'll also need a pair of scissors, a tapestry needle, and a pen or marker or something like that. I also use highlighters a lot for these projects. Now, the two papers I have sitting here, this is, I just printed on my computer. I just typed up the title, the breakdown of the degrees, which we'll talk about with the yarn, and then printed it. We're going to cut it out and make it into this sort of card that you see here. You'll also need some kind of calendar. Now, last year I printed every single month because for our motifs, we did the high and the low, And so there was more information. I found, this is a website called Calendarpedia. It's just online, like a free PDF. But I found the entire year on one page because I'm just going to use the average daily temperature each day for this project. So I just need a little tiny box to write everything in. But the entire year is on one page. Now, something I found also to be very helpful was to keep your papers in like a plastic sleeve, because you're going to be using this all year. It'll get really wrinkled and ripped up and things. So try to keep it protected in a sleeve or a folder or something like that. You can even recycle like a manila folder out of your files. So let's talk about the yarn. Now, the yarn, if you recognize it, is Red Heart Super Saver. That's what we've used for every single one of our temperature projects. And you won't use all of every color. You'll have some leftovers, and that's okay. Just save them for the next temperature project next year. And as you can see, I grabbed simply what I had on hand, but I also added some new colors. You can see this pink's a little different, this mint color, and the purple. I went a little bolder this year. But if you notice, the orchid is a color we used last year, and that's what I have. So it's just a tangled mess, and this is a real honest look at what I have on hand right now. So excuse the tangles, but I still will be using it because I want to use it up. So let's look at the breakdown. For every, I did like 10 degrees. Now, again, I'm doing Fahrenheit. You can do Celsius, whatever you use where you live, and whatever range you feel that you need for where you live as well. Now, for less than 0 degrees Fahrenheit to 10 degrees Fahrenheit, I am going to sign the orchid, this light lavender color. And if you notice, the cooler temperatures, I did cooler colors, and they sort of warm up as the temperature warms up. So for 11 to 20, I did the amethyst. For 21 to 30 degrees, Delft blue. For 31 to 40 degrees, the turquoise. Now, you may recognize some of these colors from last year. 41 to 50 is a new color, the minty. The amethyst is also new. 51 to 60 is the spring green. 61 to 70 degrees is the bright yellow. So you can notice they're warming up as we warm up in our temperatures. 71 to 80 is this pumpkin over here. 81 to 90 is the perfect pink. 91 to 100 degrees plus is the grenadine, which is a new color. I dropped the red, if you may notice, and I also dropped the white because we're not doing any join as you go. So we're not going to have red or white this year. But I thought it would be a nice, beautiful spectrum of color, and feel free to change up anything you like, and also try to use what you have on hand. It's really always great to use up what you have. Now, one thing I wanted to point out before we get started is the recommended hook size is a 5.5 millimeter I crochet hook and a 4 medium on the yarn weight scale. Now, if you notice, earlier I mentioned that we're going to use a 5 millimeter H hook. I'm going down a hook size just because we have so many rows we're going to do. It'll keep things nice and compact so our scarf isn't miles and miles long. I thought that would help a little bit. This is also, as a side note, a favorite hook of mine, so I was really excited to use this hook for this year-long project. But if you stick with these general guidelines of the I hook and the 4 weight yarn, you'll be just fine, okay? Also, another reason why I'd like to choose this yarn for these projects is there's no dye lot. So you don't have to feel any pressure to buy a whole bunch of yarn at once. You can maybe buy just some of the cooler colors for the winter months, or if you're on the other side of the world and you're experiencing summer right now, you can just buy some of the warm colors right now. It's no big deal. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set up our chart. So it's going to look like this. I'm going to just kind of keep this one off to the side. And all you want to do is when you print it, if you want to do it the way I did it, you can just cut it. Now, like I said, some people like to do a digital chart. Some people like to do, I saw somebody glue some swatches. I saw somebody use clothespins and wrap the yarn around the clothespins and just have the numbers written right onto the clothespins. I thought that was very clever. Some people wrote the words in the color. So you write the temperature in the color that you choose. And there you have it. There's our little chart. So the next thing we want to do is punch some holes in our chart. So I just went down and punched some holes in my card, and then what we're going to do is get some yarn swatches on here. This is such a great reference, so you can just look at it at a glance. So let's start with this bright pink at the bottom. And so I'm just going to take a length of yarn about, I don't know, 8 inches or so, fold it in half, and fold it in half again, and then just take your scissors and snip. We're basically just going to be putting fringe on this thing. And so then what we're going to do is take your yarn, and you can grab your hook if you need to, and just be careful because you're pulling it through paper and not through yarn, so it's a little bit more fragile. But just pull it through. You can use your hook if you need some help. And then make a loop and then pull it through. So we're just going to add a little bit of fringe all along the edge here with our yarn colors, okay? And then just pull it very gently, and we'll trim it up at the end so it looks pretty. So go ahead and do that with all of your colors for your card. Here is our lovely chart. I added all the colors, gave it a nice trim, and now we are ready to roll with our scarf. Now remember, there's no special stitch count, so you really can make a shawl or a wider blanket if you like. So it's totally up to you. We're going to get started with our calendar. Now I went in and added, now the last time you saw this calendar it was blank, so I went in and added some of the temperatures for where I live, and I wanted to point out, I did have a lot of questions about this last year. If you need to see past dates, so we always start this around the second week of January, so we have some data to put onto our calendar. So you can go to some of the weather apps and also on the desktop and look at historic weather data. You can just Google that if you can't find it. But you can look at past temperature dates, like for example, if you set your project aside and maybe a couple weeks go by and you forget about it, you can always go back and look at historical weather data if you need to. Also, I've gone a little bit ahead and done the, you can look at the 10-day forecast, etc., and look ahead as well. So you can really time this. You don't have to sit down every single day and add a row, although some people really love to do that. So you do have a little bit of flexibility about that. But I was able to put in some temperature dates, temperature numbers rather, for the dates, and so we can have some data to get started. So let me grab the first couple of colors and we're going to start working on our scarf. Okay, so based on the trends that I have where I live, if we started January 1st, we had an average daily of 41. So if we look at our chart, 41 to 50 is the minty. And then for the second day we had 39, so that is going to be the turquoise. And then I have minty for the third day and so forth. So I grabbed the minty and the turquoise just to show you the first couple of rows of our scarf, okay? So we're going to keep our chart and our calendar handy, but we already kind of know the color. So the first color we're going to start with is the minty. Now yours might be totally different depending on where you live. So grab your first color, and let me just zoom in a little bit. We're going to grab our hook, and what we're going to do is do the starting chain in the first color. So that's the minty. So our starting chain will also be the minty. So what we want to do to begin is to put a slip knot on our hook. Now you can hop over to the Fiber Flux blog, and everything from assembling this little chart to the calendar to the written pattern is on the blog as well. So be sure to check that out. So what we need to do is put a slip knot on our hook. So wrap the yarn around your fingers to make a loop. Bring the yarn behind the loop, reach in with your hook, bring up a loop, and tighten. Now, as much as we can, we're going to try to weave the ends in as we go along too, so you don't have a million ends at the end of the year. So our starting chain for our scarf is going to be 30. Now that will give us a nice scarf size width, but again, there's no special stitch count. We're going to be doing some simple half double crochet stitches, so feel free to change the starting chain as you see fit. So to make a chain, we're going to wrap yarn around hook and bring it through the loop. Again, we're doing 30 chains, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, and 30. So here is our starting chain, and we have a nice scarf width chain. Again, if you want to do a shawl, make some more chains. If you want to do a blanket, you'll need lots and lots of chains. It's totally up to you. Also on the Fiber Flux blog, if you do choose to do a temperature blanket, I will put a chart of some common blanket dimensions so you can get an idea of that as well. So let's begin row 1. Again, it's in the minty colorway. We're sticking with the same color. So what we're going to do is in the third chain from the hook. So let me just come in a little bit more. This loop on the hook does not count. We're going to count 3 chains in, 1, 2, 3, and we're going to make our first half double crochet. So to make a half double crochet, wrap yarn around hook, insert the hook into that chain, bring up a loop, wrap yarn around the hook, bring it through all 3 loops. The reason I chose the half double crochet for this is because it's a nice compact stitch, because we are doing so many rows, and it's a very quick stitch to do, but you're going to get a little bit more drape than with a single crochet stitch, okay? So we're just going to do a half double crochet in the next chain and a half double crochet in every chain across, okay? So I'm just going to work my half double crochets in every chain across. Okay, so continue on with your half double crochets. If you need to back up the video and see this half double crochet worked again, feel free to do that as well. There's also a slow motion feature on YouTube that you can use to see everything a little bit more slowed down. So I'm going to go ahead and work my half double crochets, and then when we get to the end of the row, I'm going to show you how to switch colors for the next day of our scarf. Okay, just working that last half double crochet of our row. You can see we have a nice little row of our first day on here. So what we need to do next is grab our scissors, and we're going to cut, leaving a nice tail because we're going to weave that in as we go. We don't want it to be too short. And then you can just wrap the yarn around the hook and fasten off. That's how I like to switch colors. If you have a preferred method, feel free to do that. So lay your piece down, and then we're going to grab our next color. So if we look at our calendar, the next color was 39 degrees, so we're going to use the, see, 39 would be in the turquoise range, or whatever color you've chosen. So once you have your second color, we have to insert our hook in that last stitch work. So where you tied that knot, go into that last stitch, so it'll be like a little kind of loop at the top. Go in with your hook, hook the new yarn through, and just bring it through just like that, and then you can just tie it right on. Now again, if you have a preferred method of joining yarn, definitely feel free to do that. There's a lot of ways to join yarn. Okay, so then what we're going to do is, just for a moment, we're going to get those tails out of the way, and we're going to start our new row. So what we need to do is insert the hook back into that same stitch that you last worked, bring up a loop, and we're going to chain 2. 1, 2, and we're going to turn our work. Now we're also at the same time going to hold our tails along the edge as we work, okay? So what we need to do is work a half double crochet into that first stitch, and we're going to be crocheting over those tails. Half double crochet into the next stitch, and every stitch all the way across. Okay, so we're just going to work all the way across. And if you need to give those tails a tug just to kind of straighten everything out, feel free to do that as well. Okay, so we're just going to work our half double crochets all the way across, but I'm going to work a few with you so we can weave these ends in as we go along. So when you have ends that you're also holding, you just want to kind of take your time and go nice and slow, because it is several things that you're holding all at once. So just work through that. And then once you get, I would say about halfway across, you're going to, you can drop the ends and not worry about them anymore. But we're just going to work about halfway across with our tails here. Okay, and then once your tails you feel have been woven in sufficiently, give them a little tug just so nothing's bunched up in there, because they can kind of get loose. And then you can just drop them and then go ahead and work the rest of your stitches all the way across with the second color, or you may have the same color. So if you have the same color, you don't have to switch colors yet, but I wanted to show you, mine happened to work out that way. So if you wanted to switch colors later, if you needed to do that, sometimes there's like a weather streak and you may have the same color for a few days or even a week or something like that. Sometimes it switches around a lot. Okay, so we're just working our turquoise all the way across, and I wanted to just show you this whole row just because of the ends. Okay, just working half double crochets in each stitch all the way across. And then what we're going to do at the end of the row is also work a half double crochet. Do you remember the turning chain? We're going to also work a half double crochet in our turning chain at the end of the row. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then our row is complete. So you can see we now have 2 days represented. So before you continue, what you might want to do is take your scissors, and I like to trim my tails as I go. So just make sure everything's nice and straight. Give it a little tug, but you see if I tug it too tight, see how it draws it in? You don't want that either. So if that happens, just tug it back into place. And then what you can do is give your ends a little snip. And you don't have any ends except for that very first one. And you can go ahead and weave that in now if you really want it out of the way. So what we're going to do for the rest of the year is to keep doing row 2 over and over and over again for our scarf. We have 2 days represented, and you're just going to, as each day unfolds, or again, you can look at the 10-day forecast. If you get behind, you can look at the historic weather data, and you're just going to go through and add colors for each day of the year. So my next color, as represented on my calendar, would be the minty again. Then it was a little bit warmer, so we can move to spring green, and then I had a turquoise streak, so we're going to do a couple rows of that. One more thing I wanted to add is that instead of counting and recounting and counting your rows over and over and over again, the other way your calendar can help you by not only marking off the temperatures and the color assignments, but as you complete each row on your scarf, as you add it to your scarf, you can use a highlighter and mark off which days are completed. So even though you have the information jotted here, so we did the minty, for example, here, and we did the turquoise for the second day, okay? And so that indicates to me now that, let me zoom in a little so you can see, but that indicates that that is complete. So even though we have the info, it's not completed yet for the rest of the days, but highlighting it helps me quite a bit. So when I pick up my project, I can just jump right into it. I don't have to count, because once you get about 200 rows on this, it's going to be impossible. So if you are highlighting as you go and adding it to each day, it'll help you quite a bit. It's kind of what we did for our blanket, but it helps for this scarf as well. So in my monthly updates, what we can do is I can show the progress, and I also encourage you to share your work as well. So use the hashtag FiberFluxCal to share your work. And also we have a Facebook group for all of our crochet alongs. We do a temperature cal, we do a charity challenge, we do a stash down challenge as well every year, and also we have seasonal crochet alongs. So the next one is going to be in the spring, and then we'll have our summer cal, our fall cal, and then our holiday cal at the end of the year. So join our Ravelry group, join our Facebook group, the links are down below, and you can kind of catch up with all the makers, see what people are doing, and also see what everybody did for their last temperature project. So that is the 2020 Fiber Flux Temperature Scarf Cal. Thanks so much for watching, and be sure and click that subscribe button to get all the latest Fiber Flux video updates. Thanks again!